Joining us right now is Tom Fitton. He's the president of Judicial Watch. Happy New Year, Tom, and thanks for joining us.
Happy New Year to you both.
A 5-4 decision from the Supreme Court yesterday will allow the sentencing to go forward today. So much to unpack here, but first your reaction to this decision with Chief Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joining with the liberals on the court saying, well, listen, it's not a problem. He's president and he'll be able to appeal it if he doesn't like it, so we can move forward with it. Doesn't this open the door to a ton of lawfare for the rest of this president's term?
Yes, I don't understand the decision. I mean, essentially what Chief Justice Roberts is saying, it's going to be a virtual hearing, so it won't be abusive. And don't worry about it. I don't buy in. I don't buy that at all. It's at odds with their immunity decision, which allowed a special process and protection for a president over issues related to his time in office. All that's out the window, and we're all supposed to take Merchant at his word that he won't abuse Trump, and he's allowing audio. Which is at odds with what his prior position has been there. None of this has been public before. I mean, the only good news is that, there's unlikely to be anything that results from this other than, a kangaroo court proceeding. Mm-hmm. But the president shouldn't be abused. And frankly, the courts have repeatedly, and there have been notable exceptions, failed President Trump and frankly the American people. By not curtailing this lawfare. That it's gotten to this point is a stain on the judicial system.
Well, Tom, so you said that you're not expecting much to come of this, but do you expect to see President Trump facing any severe penalty that would, or punishment that would impede his ability to lead the nation in the free world? I mean, I don't think we're expecting jail time, but what could be the outcome here?
Well, the court has effectively promised nothing will happen. That there will be no jail, no fine, no sanction in any substantive way. But they want to excoriate him and abuse him through this process. And that does impact the country. It does impact our national security. It makes us look like we're a banana republic. And that is exactly what's going on up there. It's a kangaroo court process. Merchant is literally a donor to Joe Biden. That's pretty unusual for judges. That's not something they're allowed to do, and yet he doesn't feel like the need to recuse himself. And of course, the whole court, I mean, the whole notion that he did anything wrong is even a sham and a smear.
Yeah,
it's terrible that Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joined with the leftists to allow this abuse to continue.
There's a real good odds that this is going to get overturned on appeal, and there's no reason why you can hold off the sentencing until the appeals process plays out and what have you. And again, it opens the door for more. I got to ask, it's also fascinating to me, Tom, especially your role at Judicial Watch. You're very much into transparency, trying to open up the curtains that are closed on so many of these processes that don't need to be behind closed doors. Merchant famously did not allow any cameras or any recording devices of any sort in his Manhattan courtroom. But today, for sentencing, it appears he's going to open it up for all the media to be able to see and hear. That seems brazenly political, doesn't it?
Oh, it sure does. This is a really sad time for the country in the sense that it's our whole process has been hijacked by this one court, and Alvin Bragg, obviously another Democrat operative. The fact the Supreme Court doesn't think that's an issue, and after issuing a ruling that the president has immunity and all these issues arise when the president's subject to this type of court process, when they're doing this to him literally a minute before he's inaugurated. And as you said at the top there, Larry, this is a path forward for other abusers who can get around now this Supreme Court position, this Supreme Court opinion on immunity, which reflects the Constitution's protection of the president. How far can we go without getting the Supreme Court mad at us? And yesterday's decision shows they can go a little bit far, and who knows what's going to happen next.
Well, I mean, it's a good question, especially when we consider that there are many living presidents, some of whom I think still should be brought up on charges. Hillary Clinton comes to mind, and maybe you would agree or disagree with me on President Obama as well. But I would actually just love your thoughts on yesterday's funeral, seeing all those presidents, seeing the storylines behind each of the behind them and their hatred with one another. I would just love your thoughts on yesterday's funeral.
Well, funerals are kind of awkward social occasions as it is, and D.C. funerals, especially of former presidents, it doesn't get any more awkward and interesting than that. And to see Obama yucking it up with President Trump must just drive the left crazy. And whether Kamala Harris, was just being polite and focused on the funeral or not. She's probably going to look at that today and think, man, man.
Yeah. Hey,
vibrating. Yeah.
Tom, I if I could, because as you mentioned, we're about a minute away from Donald Trump taking office with the inauguration next Monday, a week from 10 days from now. You had a frustrating time during the first Trump presidency with specifically the Justice Department, from Attorney General Sessions and then, of course, Bill Barr, who took his place. You had challenges getting information, getting FOIA requests paid attention to. As you look at the people right now getting lined up, from Pam Bondi to Harmeet Dillon, and we just learned yesterday that Leo Terrell is going to be one of Harmeet Dillon's assistant attorney generals, or deputy assistant attorney generals. How do you like this team that's being put together right now? And do you have working relationships with any of them? Do you think that it's going to be a little bit better to get information that is legally your right and our right as American citizens to get through these FOIA requests?
Well, we'll see if we have working relationships once they get in there. Yeah. To me, there's got to be a commitment by the president. Was wonderfully transparent as president. He's the most transparent president in the modern era. I mean, we can all see that. Everything he did, he was forthright on and was very public about his thinking and such. And there was a challenge, as you say, with the Justice Department, kind of this institutional secrecy. I suspect that will change a bit, but we will see. And there's got to be a commitment by his appointees to this transparency. And there has to be, in terms of this general issue of lawfare, I'd go on a transparency tear to expose everything that went on from the White House on down in terms of the targeting of Trump and other innocents. And the Justice Department is well positioned to try to vindicate the rule of law there. But I would take a step back if I were the president and say, this Justice Department institutionally is incapable of investigating itself. The FBI is incapable of investigating itself. And I'd appoint a special prosecutor, an independent counsel outside the Justice Department directly, if I were Trump, to look into what Alvin Bragg was up to look into Fannie Willis and Jack Smith and Garland and all the rest on this lawfare against him.
That would be great. I'd recommend Joe DeGeneva as that special prosecutor, but then we'd lose another regular guest. We're losing all our guests to this administration, Tom. You better stay right where you are at Judicial Watch. We can't lose you as well.
Well, and the fact they're going into government should be no excuse, Larry and Patrice, from coming on your show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that plug.
Thanks, Tom. Always good to talk with you, my friend.